This is Politics Done Right. We are back, and now I am honored, as usual, to be with my brother from another mother, David Reid. David, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you.
I see you every year at Daily Kos. David is another one of our prolific writers at Daily Kos. He's the one who founded, what again?
Black Kos.
Black Kos as well. He's the one who, I like to say sometimes, he's the one who gave some good coloring to the Daily Kos family, right? Right, Mr. Reid?
Yeah, I tried. We helped get a lot of notice for writers of color. We some of them are now feature writers. They started out in our group, and also we just helped to diversify the progressive blogs.
The progressive voice.
Progressive voice, yes.
I mean, and you're instrumental in doing that. So, David, how is today's politics versus the last time I saw you?
Yeah, well, obviously, there's the major thing, the elephant in the room, so to speak, is Trump,
right,
and the rise of the alt-right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sucking out a lot of the energy, and a lot of the energy is being kind of focused on opposing that type of agenda. But at the same time, what's really gives me hope is we're also seeing not just an opposition movement, but also, okay, so we oppose this, we get into power, what next? And that's something that, the progressives and Democrats in general have really struggled over the years, is to articulate, okay, we're not just opposed to something, what do we want?
David, it's interesting. I'm glad that you brought that up, because I don't know if you've seen my blogs. I mean, I talk about Trump, but I don't talk about Trump in the form of his women, in the form of his Russia or whatever. I said those things will take care of themselves. We have to start telling people, look, if you dump him, if you dump what these guys represent, what are we going to offer? And I wrote a blog a few months ago called "These are the 5 things every Democrat should have on their tongue." It included things like student debt. It included things like many of the other subjects, but student debt took it over. But what I try to explain to folks is, we may think we're winning now, but Trump just has to make one call to change things around. And people change because, again, they don't know if we make this change, are we getting better? Are we going to get something real? And what Democrats have had a hard time doing is standing up for what they believe in, standing up for that platform. Yeah. So my question to you is, do you really think we have a problem articulating what progressive stand for, or do you think Democrats simply, what I call the establishment, is unable to support the platform that they have written on paper?
So I think there's a number of things going on. So, in some ways I am an established Democrat. I do get out the vote efforts for the party. I mean, I walk precincts. I've been a precinct captain. So I do a lot of those things. But I think in general, Democrats truly believe that people should work together and that we should all unify. And sometimes that's our great strength, but sometimes that's our great weakness, because it's very hard sometimes to get the establishment to say we need to strike not really a hard line is the right word, but we need to strike these positions. This is what we support. Everybody needs to get on board, and we're going to move. And because the establishment will say, hey, we've got Democrats in the rural, state of such and such. Are they going to support it? Maybe we need to water it down so that sells everywhere. And and I know some people think that's a corruption or something, but really it's just the general attitude of Democrats, kind of the general belief that sometimes it's hard to get people who believe so much in giving everybody a voice to say that, hey, sometimes you have to just raise your voice and say this is what we believe in. So it's kind of I think, but to tell you the truth, I really see a movement towards a recognition that the progressive wing is where the energy and the ideas are.
Exactly.
And, it's up to the party to sell those ideas and to push those ideas to people, and not just say, hey, thank you for helping us get elected, now leave the hard work to us.
The interesting thing about what you're saying, David, is I want to take it a step further, because there's another blog post that's out there where I stated that if you take a look at all the numbers, the Americans in general, and I'm not only talking Democrats, I'm talking Americans in general, when polled on issues, they are they are definitely progressive on on a lot of the issues that they're searching for. It is many times it is our establishment who create a false narrative. And by the way, I'm an establishment. In effect, I'm a Democratic precinct chair.
Okay, very good.
So
Yeah.
I go out there and I do the job as I'm supposed to do the job, but at the same time, I do not carry the narrative that says, "Oh, well, let's placate our platform."
Yes,
Because we don't need to. Americans are with us. The only time they're not with us is if we don't carry that mantra with a passion. If we somehow are hesitant about it.
Yeah. Well, let me go back a few years to give you an example of what I'm talking about. Let's take something that some young people are going to take for granted now: marriage equality.
Right.
Now, if you think about the battle that happened, a lot of Democrats were traumatized by in 2004. George Bush really was propelled in part by running against the fear of gay marriage, right? So, everybody on the Democratic establishment says, hey, you know what? Civil unions, it's not marriage. It's giving, people, it's giving gay people rights. But, we're kind of cool with that. We'll stay in the middle, and we're doing that. And it was really up to the progressive activists to push and say, no, we want full equality. And many people in the Democratic establishment thought that was going to kill the party. If we ran on full marriage equality, there's no way that, a Democrat could win in Iowa or Missouri or any of those places, right? But what we saw was by taking a stand, people respect that, even if they disagree with you. And I think that's really something that Democrats have had a harder time to understand, is that people don't want to agree with you on everything. They just want to know that you stand for something, that you're willing to listen to them if they disagree with you, but they want to feel you have a solid foundation. That's what's going on.
I'll tell you something, David. I agree with that, but I think sometimes it's a bit more sinister in that I think the fact that you know that, the fact that I know that, they know that as well. The interesting thing is that I just think and I use this in several other interviews that I did. There's this stuff called the rails, the left rail and the right rail. People will put the Democratic Party establishment at the left rail and the Republican Party establishment at the right rail. Tell me something about that track.
Well, they're afraid that, if you stare too... So if you think about a subway train, right, they have an electrified rail, right? But in this kind of frame, people think that both rails are electric. So if you go too far to the right, you're going to get electrocuted. If you go too far to the left, you get electrocuted. So the establishment always thinks that, oh, those progressive ideas are actually on the other side of the left rail. We don't want to go over there. We're just going to stay over here. And what's really happening is that rails, if you think about it, the two rails are starting to veer right? So what was maybe in the middle before is starting to creep towards the right wing, but the establishment is still afraid to step over that rail and get back to the middle.
And I want to add a little calorie to that, and that's not the only thing. In as much as one is a left rail and one is a right rail, guess what's happening? They're moving in the same damn direction.
Yeah.
And I think the reality now is that it's time for us to realize that the same direction, and you just mentioned what the direction is, rightward, is something that we have to stop. And unless we derail that left rail, we're going to keep moving in the same direction, which is rightward.
And I just wanted to also say something about, so progressive activists as well, right? So, I've been an activist as well in my life, and one of the things that happens sometimes is when your issue doesn't seem to be moving fast enough, they get frustrated at the party. They want to leave the party. They don't want to vote. They say, oh, they're just taking me for granted. This establishment is crooked or rigged or whatever the thing is. One battle is not a war, okay? So you look at something like the civil rights movement, right? You look at, sometimes I think people think Martin Luther King had a march and all of a sudden everybody got rights. No, there was marches, there was pushback, there was, some rights got, and then some people voted it out. People were, they said kids can go to school, and then all of a sudden the governor said, no, we're not going to support it, and then the feds had to come in. So these things aren't one battle. So if you feel fed up and you say, I'm not going to vote, that's not the way. Yeah, no, you have to push the party, but you got to be a member of the party. You got to push the party. The best way to get the Democratic Party to do what you want is to get in the Democratic Party, join it, and run the party, and then you get to decide what you want. So you can't be frustrated and think that things aren't moving fast enough and withdraw. You got to be frustrated things aren't moving fast enough and get involved. And there's consequences when you don't get involved or don't vote, and some of the problems we see these days are because of that. So the way I look at it is the party, the establishment has got to embrace progressives more, but progressives have also got to be willing to do some of the hard work for the party. Yeah, and that may mean sometimes you got to go do. No, I don't even say compromise so much, but maybe your candidate doesn't win. That doesn't mean you don't go get out the vote for the other candidate.
Right.
That doesn't mean that you don't, donate time and money for another candidate somewhere that you support. But what that means is 2 years later, 4 years later, 6 years later, depending on what the race is, you get another opportunity to push your issue. And that's what we really got to get more into the attitude of is, we're going to continue to fight, but keep it, it's like a family. You argue with your brother, you argue with your sister, but at the end of the day, the family's got to get stronger and work together.
David Reid, I'm in complete agreement. That is our job.
Yes.
Our job is to make sure that the folks that follow us, the folks that listen to us, the folks that read us know that yes, we are progressive, but at the same time, we are for the party to make sure that we get a chance to win. Thank you so
All right,
kindly
thank
for
you.
being here.
Always a
David.
pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, my friend.